If you love it, you got to get up and keep trying. What else are you living for? I mean, I could have a little bit more. I could have some more money, yes, which we
Hmm.
all love that. But
Yeah.
you know, you also got to enjoy what you do. It's very stereotypical when you say it. You got to enjoy life and all the other things that people talk about. You can't blow everything within means, but I would say if you love it, when things are bad, you got to get up and keep trying.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Life Inner Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome, amazing, abundant, prosperous, fun, fantastic lives. I am joined by my co-host, Polish Peter. What's up, dude?
I don't know if it was just me just now, but I heard we help people bake more, not make more. So maybe it's just me. If
we
you want to
don't,
rewind
we
it,
don't
listening
help.
to see if you guys heard bake or make.
Yeah, I don't think that's what I meant to say. Maybe I'm just hungry and I'm thinking about food or something. Like, no,
Is this a baking show
make
now?
more.
We're turning into the
Yeah.
baking. All right.
Well, listen. So today we're baking a cake of awesomeness with our guest. Listen, some of you guys may know who he is, and some of you may not. This is Ned Brown. So, Ned is a former professional, like high level, like in the magazines, sponsorship, all the bells and whistles, skateboarder from back in the day, and now he's a professional motorcycle racer as well with Moto America, and he's a business owner. And so I had the cool opportunity of running into him. I was introduced to him through a mutual friend. At first, I didn't even realize who he was, and then it hit me later. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was Ned Brown. So I'm really excited for this episode, man.
Yeah, one of the coolest things that I've got to hear from this episode is his journey and going way back in the day in the skateboard and how this journey is evolved. So what I would encourage you guys to listen for some of those little lessons that he pulls out of there. One thing that I remember he said, what his dad say. He said something really important to him, and I love that.
Yeah.
Then we talked about, he built his own skateboard. I was like, what? So I want to encourage you guys to listen, to pull some of those little lessons. And then after we're done with this podcast, we're going to, pull out some of our lessons that we got out of this episode.
Yeah, dude, lots of nuggets. Awesome conversation. Great guy. Let's go to our interview now with Ned Brown, also known as Peanut or Nut for short. Ned, what's up, man? Welcome for coming to Life Inner Show.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for welcoming me on the show. I appreciate that.
Yeah, dude. By the way, how did you? I'm just curious. I mean, I know this has nothing to do with the interview, but like, how did you get the name Peanut? Like, where'd that come from?
Way back skating. So it was Easy Rider Skateboard Park in Wilmington, Delaware, and they had the normal stuff from way back. So this is mid '70s, and I used to just be pretty good in the Peanut Bowl. So then I got the nickname Peanut.
Dude, all right. Well, and so that's actually the first thing I wanted to talk about, man. So for those of you now, some of you who are listening right now may recognize Ned Brown as a name. You may recognize Peanut or Nut. Dude, you were a pioneer. Like in the skating world and professional skating world, you were a pioneer as really being the first black skater out there who was making a name for himself. And it's funny, man, because I was talking to my cousin here about a month ago. We were talking about bikes. I'm like, dude, you'll never guess who I ran into. And I'm like, do you remember Ned Brown? He's like, dude, what? I'm like, yeah, he's like racing motorcycles now, and he's like a pro racer. Pro racer. He's like, bro, he was a skater. He's like, I remember that guy. He was a freak. He was doing all this kind of crazy stuff. He was like, and I'm like, yeah, dude, it's nuts. And it's so we're totally geeking out. And now, dude, like I'll just tell you right now, I was horrible. We were terrible. We had like 2 tricks. None of them were impressive, but like you were a guy who just came on the scene and like. People were just like, I mean, just blown away. And tell us what it was like when you first went into that. Like, because I went back and did some research, and it seemed like there's even some friction with some other riders with you. Like they had some sort of problem with you, and like, so I'm wondering like what that was like for you, how you got into skating, and then we'll talk about like the motorcycle stuff later.
Yeah, I mean it was way back. Now I wasn't the first, but I was
Okay.
one of the early.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there was a guy named Chuck Treese in the Wilmington area. He's was not only skating, he was huge into music as well, still is. Had a band back then called McRad. And so he was a bit of a pioneer as far as a lot of alternative music or hardcore music or however you want to say it, as far as being one of the only black guys who were doing some of that as well. So he was there. We had another guy, Don Hillsman, who was down in the Atlanta area. So there were a few of us. And just at different times, I ended up being the only one. There wasn't that many. So especially on the East Coast, there really wasn't that many. Steve Stedham, is just got inducted to the skateboarding Hall of Fame out west. So he was out west, and both and I used to ride for him. So I used to ride for him. But at one point when he stopped touring, I was the only brother on tour, doing vertical skateboard contests and stuff like that at that point. So I got in a long time ago. I mean, just normal stuff. We're kids, and my cousin had a skateboard. He was from the DC area. He had a skateboard, and so he showed up at a family reunion with a skateboard. So he taught me how to ride it, and then at that particular point, I started liking it. So I made, I remember making a skateboard in like shop class in middle school, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" And then my father was open to things. So what he would do is take me down to a skate park called Dover's, about an hour from Wilmington. He would take me to the Dover skateboard park, and he would drop me off, and then he would go play golf. And then he would pick me up, and that kind of morphed. He was a African American, vice principal, and he ended up having a skateboard club at his school. So it morphed, and my parents were supportive of this alternative stuff, even though I did play, all the other sports as well.
So, but now what was it about skateboarding that you just loved it? You just gravitated towards it? Like you just instantly fell in love, or?
Yeah. And, I couldn't tell you what it was. It was just one of those things. I'm very competitive. In the beginning, a lot of skating was not necessarily considered athletic. I was always, my father's in the African-American Hall of Fame in Delaware for track. My uncle's in for track and football. I have some other people in there. So I'm predisposed to competing, and just skateboarding gave me that opportunity. So I enjoyed that. And then we started taking trips up to Cherry Hill, and I won't go into all the different places, but Cherry Hill is a legendary skateboard park in the late 70s, early 80s that revolutionized things on the East Coast. And that was in Jersey. So my father would take me up there. That's when I was able to meet a couple other guys. I was still, barely able to do anything, but just being around that, man, it was just something that I couldn't get enough of.
Dude, and then how long were you in this before you ended up? I mean, because you got your own board. I mean, you were in the magazines, like you were the man. Like, how did that progress for you? Like, and what was that like?
It's funny, I went through. I played ball. We won the state championship basketball. Not that I was a starter or anything, but I was in it. I just played ball and played football, ran track, all the other stuff. So during that particular time, around early 80s, probably 82-ish or so, I stopped skating. So started in like 76 or so, and then went through. Skateboarding back then used to be a bell curve sport. It was up and it was down. It was up, it was down. And so it was kind of down at that particular point. And I went and played even more organized sports at that time. Went to college at University of Delaware, and they had a ditch contest, a skateboard ditch contest. And
What's
I'm like, yeah, well, it was at the point, there weren't a lot of ramps and things like that. So it was literally a ditch.
So you're jumping over it?
No, it was a ditch, like a drainage ditch.
Oh,
and so it had shape to it. Yeah. And so there was a skateboard scene that I had no clue about at the University of Delaware. So, I said, okay, cool. I used to skate. So it wasn't that long ago. Let me go to this ditch contest. That was like 84 or so. And so I went there, met a bunch of guys who were in the scene. And again, just all of a sudden, it rekindled everything that I had, 3-4 years prior. And so from that point, stayed in it, got a job at a, little part-time job at a bicycle skateboard shop, and was able to progress and buy some stuff for them, be a buyer, and just kind of getting immersed. BMX was huge. So I'm seeing the BMX guys. I'm getting back into skating. I'm getting back into magazines and looking at things. And I just kept skating. And I kept entering contests, and then eventually turned pro in 87. So it was really cool.
Dude, so, I'm curious, like one of the things that we talk about a lot in life in here is people like doing what they love and ideally, if possible, making a living out of it. Were you at the point where that was sufficient for you, like to be your primary income, or did you always have kind of a side gig as well that kind of kept you financially kind of stable? Yeah,
I kind of, it's a weird way is, I got a lot of values installed by my parents. Sorry, man, my dog. Hey. So,
you just snapped fingers at your dog and you just went like,
He just
I
listens,
did,
man.
but he didn't move.
Give him a look.
He's not paying. He's not paying any attention to me at all. So, but the when I went was able to thought that this could be something I wanted to do. So I dropped out of school, which was strange. So I dropped out of school, and I asked the distributor that I ended up signing for. I asked him for a job. So they were selling stuff to the skateboard shop, and I was a buyer. So I made connections with them. I ended up riding for them, being a sponsored rider for them. And then I decided to drop out because they said, hey, we're going to start an East Coast distributor. And would you be interested in doing that? So I turned pro for them and started doing sales rep stuff for them all at the same time.
Man.
So I moved back home, used the old phone in my old bedroom. My parents said, you got 6 months in here. So I hung in there, and I was on the phone, making phone calls, selling skateboard stuff out of my bedroom, my old bedroom, while I was still skating. And that developed into, I was making some money. And then I moved down here to Virginia Beach. If I didn't have that distributor job, then I probably could have hung in there for a year or two with just skating. But I started working pretty much at the same time and then moved down here.
Man, so it kind of but what's interesting is you found a niche that not only, so you approached it from more than one angle. And so you had the skating, and then you had the business side of it over here with the distribution, but you also had the performance side and the sponsorship and the riding. So that's really interesting, man, because we see people that take that kind of similar approach a lot of times with stuff that they realize hey, there's part of it I like, and then I can see this other part over here that's kind of related to it. It's still in the same niche, and I can combine these things to get to do what I love and get to do what I like kind of at the same time. And so how long was that a thing for you? And then what happened after that?
Probably it was a thing from what I moved here, so 87 to about 92. So I was working in 1990. I got a chance to we went different places in the country, different places around the world, Switzerland or through Europe or different places, and they paid for that. I mean, it was incredible for me to even have that opportunity. The only way you're going to have that opportunity at my age at that particular point is through the military, And so I got a chance. So they actually the biggest trip was 1990. I went to South Africa, and so I was the first pro skater to go down to South Africa. We had 4 of us that all went down. It was a team of us. They wanted to show some of the Black Africans, because there's a lot of white Africans. But they were trying to show a lot of the young Black Africans, this Black athlete in kind of an alternative sport. So they brought me over there, and they brought us over there, and we developed a whole tour around South Africa. It was the best trip I've ever been on. It was also the worst trip I've ever been on, just because of everything you see. This is 1990, 1991 in South Africa, in the middle of apartheid, or as apartheid is kind of coming to an end to a certain extent, and Mandela is being released and all that. There was a lot of turmoil at that particular point. So it was fantastic to get a chance to go over there. Went over there, incredible, came back, was at a contest here and got hurt. I twisted my foot around, it was pointing back behind me. So really fun times. And at that point, tried to come back a little bit more, did some stuff, but then it was kind of fading at that point. So it ended around that 92 range.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, man, that's just around. That's the time. Yeah, man, I was doing my little sorry tricks on my skateboard, looking at you guys like you're the pro, man. Yeah, Peter, you got something.
Yeah. So listen, I got a question for you, because one of the things that you brought up is you grew up in a pretty competitive household, from what it sounds like, right? Like your dad and your grandpa and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What's it like growing up in a competitive household like this? I mean, do you level up because of that, or how does that work for you?
I think you try to level up, and some people succeed. We see a lot of that, those basketball, football players, and a lot of other sports where the father was was a pro, and then the son, or they're coaching or any kind of different things. We see that. So you definitely try to level up. It wasn't pressure put on me to do that. It was just, you see the athleticism through your family, through your where, or even educationally. they have a standard that they want you to achieve. So you're trying to level up and trying to please just like any other, kid at that particular point. So pressure wise, no, not in the least, but you look around, you're aware. And so you want to be able to do what your dad does. You want to be able to do what he does and as a guy. And so you just try to do that.
Okay, gotcha. So as you're growing up and getting into the, skateboard, getting better and everything, did you look for mentors at that time? Or is it just like, I'm going to go all out and...
Yeah, in skating, you're not, it's not as structured, at least it wasn't then. And it really isn't now. It's not as structured like that. You run into mentors, if you want to put them that way. Mm-hmm. So you run into mentors. That's why I spent some time with Chuck Treese, as I talked about, and then kind of crossways, not really a mentor, but a partner, Don Hillsman down in Atlanta, and others. You start looking and you run into those people. Steve Stedham, who was huge in the, one of the only black skaters at that time, and he was out west in the middle of everything, and he was with Powell Peralta and all those things. You end up using them as mentors, but you're not necessarily looking at them in that manner.
Gotcha. So one of the other questions that pops up into my head as you're talking is you're kind of like one of the very few in a league of many kind of a thing, right?
Yep.
What's it like to go through that process like this? Because you kind of, in a way, you stick out, I think, right? In a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what's that like to go through that way?
Some of it you're looking at, when you're a kid, you have a certain amount of willful ignorance, I'll say, to a certain extent. So you're not, because of some civil rights history in my family and really paying attention to African American history and things like that, what's around you. And we grew up at a time, you definitely know what's around you. You initially get out and think that you're just there. You just happen to be a person, of color in this scenario. You're not trying to blaze any trails. You're just out riding. So it really depends on how you're accepted and how you're not. For the most part, I was accepted in where I went locally. My parents were teachers, so when we would travel in the summer, I would go to New Hampshire, or I would go to California, we would travel in the summers, and they would look for a skateboard park for me to go to. I didn't have a lot of frictions and things like that. Later, as I kept going, I started running into some frictions when you're really in the scene rather than just a kid riding. Mm-hmm. Then you're in that scene, and now you're starting to run into more frictions, which I did, and you got to deal with them. I think in some cases, some people were not used to anybody giving them pushback on some stuff, and I'm not taking a lot of that. And so, that I end up having more of a reputation of that sometimes other than skating. So
how you respond to that?
The one main incident, I had where a guy just used the N-word, and he called me that when we were at the amateur skateboard championships in Anaheim, California, way back. And he actually was picking on a guy, a white guy, good friend of mine, Blaze Bluen, rest in peace. He's no longer with us. Really cool, chill guy, an incredible skater. Just everybody liked Blaze. I mean, he was just a shit. He was it. And the guy was picking on him. He was kind of a neo-Nazi guy, and he was picking on him. I had heard about this guy, but I hadn't seen him. He was out west. I hadn't seen him much. So now we see him, and he looked at me when I stood up for Blaze, and he said that, and I just had to act appropriately. So you get that you're not going to take that from other people, and then so it doesn't come your way, or people at least know you're going to respond that way.
Man, and I wonder, like, well, of course, I guess as you progress in the ranks, now you're a threat, right? You're competition. Like, you're like, this guy's gonna take my trophy. Like, so that can bring out all kinds of things and stuff. And I think, Peter, I'm glad you asked the question, because, man, like, we see, for instance, and whenever I think and I'm just curious, like, whenever you're in a minority, and I don't mean like a minority ethnicity, for instance, but even, let's, for instance, if you look at business, where women typically aren't as represented as men, like, what is that like when, you are, and is it something you can kind of just like brush aside, and you're like, you just do you, and you just do your thing, and you don't worry about it? Or does that really affect you, like, or can it affect you if you're in any kind of atmosphere? This is hugely embarrassing, but I remember
nothing like putting it on the podcast.
I know, man. We might have to delete this. But we're keeping it. I was trying to, and Ned, I was trying to stretch my comfort zone. So in college, I took a hip hop dance class. I was the only guy in there. everybody else was like 10 years younger than me, and I knew I was that creepy old guy. Like I could tell. Like and so what was that like for you?
Ned,
Like,
by the way, it still didn't work.
Don't
If
judge.
You see
Don't
him
judge,
ever
man.
dance any kind of dance, it's like looking at the, like, I don't know, stick figure doing something.
So like whether it's skin color or gender or whatever, like what was that like? And is that something that affected you, or it didn't really matter to you?
No, it definitely affects you, but you can't. It's not central focus if it's something you love. My father says, never let them take your joy, and we talk about don't never let anybody else take your joy. So even though you're a minority in that particular activity, you're going to press forward as much as you can. And now you have to look over your shoulder. Now you have to be aware. Now you have to question people's motivations. Now you have to do those things. But that doesn't mean you stop pushing to do what you enjoy. I was one of the few Black, I'll say, action sports representatives. I hired a sub rep, and he was a brother as well. And so it morphed from skateboarding. I was still skating, but just not much. And then I was selling again. I was back to selling skating and in snowboarding and other avenues like that. And I was the only guy. So but I didn't have a lot of direct people coming at me.
Yeah.
And so you definitely know, and you're aware, and it can affect different things. But one thing about that industry, that whole action sports industry, there's a bunch of discrimination in there, as it is in life in general. But it's a lot of times they want you to skate, they want you to snowboard, it's shared experiences in that particular industry, and somebody may be looking at you, for what you are. Other people are looking at you just the fact that you're participating. And so I say it's more people looking at you and you're just participating and enjoying it, rather than the opposite way. Of course, those other people stand out sometimes.
Got it. Well, man, so Peter, I was introduced to Nut at a track. Actually, I had gone to watch. I have a pattern of being terrible at things. But anyways, I rode bikes.
You haven't figured it out yet?
But I don't give up. That's my thing, man. I don't give up. So I was riding. I was riding in the 90s, and a mutual friend, I went to the track, and Nut was racing. I'm like, first of all, and by the way, I didn't put it together at first, like who you were. I didn't make the connection from skating until later. But so in that race, this is a Moto America professional motorcycle, like street racing. It's on a track, right? But you get your crotch rocket bike, and you're just zooming around these corners, and Nut is just like destroying people. Like, and you did like what? Like, I don't even remember what place you were in, but it was like,
it's like 35, 40 people. I think I got 12. Dude, 12. Right.
That's legit. Like, wow. That is legit. And so how in the world did you go from a professional skateboarder and actually I'm curious about this too, because like here you are, like when you're really good at something, people almost expect you to stay there and be good at that. And sometimes I've seen people that, like, when they try to learn something new, they get hesitant, and they're like afraid to, because they're afraid to be a novice again. They're afraid to suck and have the humility isn't something that, they're so used to being good, they don't want to suck again. And so how did you make the transition out of being a professional skater to now, like, to a professional, motorcycle racer? Like, what? I think
you
just
wanted to go faster, right?
Right. Yeah. I would that Pete, I would say, you're it's same mentality.
Is it?
It's same mentality. Okay. You're pushing. And so you're pushing some boundaries and everything else, and that's why you'll see it. My father always wanted to ride motorcycles, but my mom, we weren't really having that, and I lived in the city, So, and then my mother passed in like '99, and so here we are, and my father and I are thinking about motorcycles, and I said, look, I think I'm gonna try to ride a motorcycle, and that same cousin. His name's Steve, same cousin who showed me how to ride a skateboard. He was big into motorcycles and all motorsports. Same guy. So again, there you go. Forget the levels. Same mentality, trying different things, out there pushing. And so he came down. I said, I'm going to buy a bike. He's like, well, I got to show you how to ride it. So he helped me learn how to ride the bike. I remember going down this road. It's not far from my house, and I'm sweating it out, man. I'm holding on for dear life. And we're going, we were like I don't know, 30 miles an hour, 40. I'm just like, man, this is crazy. Because I was older too. I was 33 at the time. So I just learned how to ride. And I look in the rearview mirror and he's sitting there riding with one hand. And I'm like, man, that's incredible, you know. So I remember that whole experience. So he helped me there. And I made a decision to do road racing rather than dirt bike, because actually the skateboard kind of motif kind of goes dirt bike wise. A buddy of mine had gotten on a bike and he cased a jump and he pushed his legs up into his hip flexor and broke his hip flexors. And right when I was making a decision on which way to go, and I said, the way that I am, I'm going to try some stuff and I'm going to get even more broken up. So I'm going to go on the road. Not knowing the road, you don't get as injured, but you can pass. Yeah. So it's not an injury thing all the time, but it's the other way, you know. So that's how I kind of got into it. And then he was the same guy. He said, well, I've always wanted to go to the racetrack. And I don't know anything. So now we're into 2000 and I don't know anything. I'm like, sure, I'll go to track with you. You know, I started now looking at a little bit of racing on TV. I'm watching people and I'm starting to get in it. And I went to the track with them to VIR, same track, way back in 2000. And it was when the first time they had a motorcycle day. I happened to be there the first day that they had motorcycles back on the track since they reopened. And man, at that point, I was like, this is incredible. So I rode back and forth a little bit on the street, went back to the track and go back and forth. And then I just stayed out at the track is where I wanted to be. So.
Dude, so I want to, there's a lot I want to unpack there, but the first thing I want to talk about is like, tell me more about this mentality, like that made you successful, about pushing it, like pushing the limits, about, it sounds like what you said, it's the same mentality that made you successful in skateboarding, that's also made you successful in the bike stuff. And I'm sure there's other ventures as well. We'll talk about that's carried over in that too. Is that something like people can develop? Like, and what do you like, can you characterize what that mindset is?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that people can develop. There's some natural tendencies. There's some very conservative people. And I'm not talking on a political nature. I'm just talking about conservative in life and how they go about and looking 10 ways to cross the street kind of people. And then there's that guy or that person who will only look once and go right across, you know? And so I do believe as you get more confidence in yourself, then you are able to make riskier decisions or take bigger chances if you have some kind of confidence in yourself. And if you don't have that confidence, you're not going to be able to do it, and you're always going to be hesitant. Even if you may have the tools, you don't know you have the tools, so you're going to be hesitant. If you fail, you're not going to want to get up because you're hesitant. You know, you tried it once, I'll never do it again. So I do believe that the mentality coming from skating, to me, I owe everything that I have, what little bit I have, and what I'm trying to do. All that stuff is from skating. Everything is from skating and the groundwork that my parents laid, you know, the foundation. I'm not talking about that, but activity wise, everything comes from skating because it was a mentality to try different things, push and give things a shot and be willing to take a chance. So I think that is there. People can develop it. They can overcome certain things. You know, I definitely think that. And we see that all the time in all kinds of facets. But there's a little natural scenario involved. And I just happened to have it or discovered it when I was younger.
So how do you get past, like, so whenever you're pushing, like at some point you push too far, whether it's a skateboard or it's a motorcycle, and you're going to bust your tail and like, it's probably going to hurt. You might even get injured. How do you get back up and dust it off and like get back on the horse? Like what goes through your mind? I mean, like, is there a way that you're just like, oh, this is just part of the game and I need to accept it? Or like, how do you talk to yourself at all through this? Or
oh yeah, you definitely talk to yourself. You definitely talk to yourself a lot. You know, when you hit pretty hard and you've broken some stuff and you're like, and you're in motorcycles, you're not making a lot of money. There's only a few people who make real money. You're really doing, whether you do it at the level that I've been able to get there, still supporting, you're still just doing it for the passion, or you're going to the track day. We're all the same. You're going to track days. You're not really making anything. You're doing it for the love of it. But those guys who go out and spend all that money on cars and racing cars and destroying stuff and they dip in their pocket and do it, they have a love for that. But you have to, you know, be able to overcome. You feel like this is what it is. When I don't ride, and I'm starting to skate a bit more, but when you don't ride, you miss it. It's a huge section of your life that's missing. Once you get that adrenaline rush, how else do you get it? Where do you get it from? You can get it slightly by investing in some businesses or trying things. You're definitely there, but that adrenaline rush, you're always looking for it, and so you're always going, how else do I get it? And so it ends up being a lifestyle in whatever way you do it.
And it's just worth it. So when you crash and burn, you're like, okay, but I still love it and I still miss it, and I'm still gonna get back on that bike or the board, and we're gonna do it again.
Absolutely. And you see, I don't think he was there today that we did that track day. But you see guys, there's been people who have crashed and been paralyzed from the waist down. Okay. And there's a few of them that we see come back out with some special things on the bike, and they're riding. Their legs are clipped in and they're riding.
Wow.
You talk about overcoming. Man. This is something that is beyond anything that any normal person would ever have to really overcome, other than certain diseases and things. And these people come back out. And when you look at that, I mean, everything pales in comparison.
Right. That's like, you love it so much that it's part of who you are that you're just gonna figure out a way. You're just gonna make it. You're just gonna figure out a way.
If you can do it, you're gonna give it a shot.
Yeah. That's wild, man. Yeah, no, I haven't seen that, but that's incredible. And so you've taken this mindset, you've applied it to athletic performances, you've applied it to performance in racing bikes. Where else has this mindset, do you find it applicable, and what else have you done? Because now you run a business as well, and a couple businesses. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it started with the whole sales repping thing a while back, a long time ago, and I was an independent sales rep. So you have to make your own money. You have to do your own thing. It's great to sell that stuff, but you're a 1099 employee. There's no security there. That morphed into I started a franchise back in 05 or so, called Tropical Smoothie Cafe. So I invested in that and was a franchisee. That really was born out of wanting to spend more time with my daughter, to be honest, to be traveling less. And I needed something locally. But again, instead of just going to get a job, the mentality is I'm going to start a business. So, but I really was trying. It was all impetus because I needed to be at home more because of some domestic stuff, And so I started that, and that ran from basically 06 when I opened to 2011, 12. And the beginning part went through the recession. So you remember the recession in 2008? That was rough. So you see people rolling out the back door. You pull up and they're chucking their merchandise, and there was a carpet store next to me. They're chucking stuff and taking off. I mean, people, it was a terrible time. And it was a really rough time, especially for small restaurants and they call them quick serve restaurants, QSRs. So it was really, really tough time. It wasn't good for me. Financially, it was just as rough as everybody else. But the only way to recoup those massive losses was actually to take another chance. So I rolled the dice and started another one. The only way I was going to get these losses back was I signed on for 2 to begin with, but instead of walking away, I said, I'm going to take another chance. And luckily for me, the second one was a lot more successful. I still lost a ton, but I was able to get up under at least some of the bank notes and things like that. And the recession started coming back around, remember around 11, I don't know how old you guys are, but around that 11 range, they started talking about it coming back. And at that point I was like, man, it's, you're on the verge of bankruptcy. It's right here. You almost went bankrupt the first time. What are you going to do? And so at that particular point, I sold, and I sold. I couldn't go through it anymore. I sold it and got a corporate job for the first time. So that was 2012. So I was like 40 something. And here I am going into a call center. I had never even been in a call center before. I never stepped foot in any large business other than a Christmas party with my ex-wife. And here I am, like, going in at the very minimum salary. And I did get a job as a supervisor and going through their training and everything else. I'm talking about complete fish out of water. I've never worked for anybody. I've never done any of this. And, we're rolling. I'm 44 years old, I believe, at that time, where this is crazy. This is unbelievable. But this is where I'm at. I don't have any choice. This is what I got to do to get myself back going. And so I went through that particular process right there.
And then how long did you do that before you decided to open your current business? Was it? And
so
I guess we had current businesses.
Yeah. So we went, So from 12 to 17, I was in there. I was at Geico. I was in Geico, and I ended up being on the phone. So I'm a 45-year-old guy, 46-year-old guy, 47-year-old guy asking people to buy motorcycle insurance. But I had the motorcycle tie-in.
Oh, there you go.
I was selling motorcycle insurance.
So you were telling them when you're going 150 miles an hour, you need an insurance.
Right, exactly. We would have good conversations. It worked out well. So that ended up being, after a few years, ended up being a little bit more successful for me. But my wife obviously knew about all the other stuff that I've done, and she wanted to start her own salon. So we did some very small things in 15. I helped her get those things together. And in 17, we opened a larger location. It's 2,100 square feet. And it's a little bit of a transient industry. So we got already about between 11 and 15 employees all the time. And so we've just passed our 5-year anniversary, in this year back in July. And so we did that, survived COVID, survived those things. We were still pressing. We're trying. We're not exactly where we want to be, but we keep pushing. This is going to be our best year ever. So we were headed for a really good year in 2020. Then COVID hit, and so it's taken us 2.5 years to reset. So we're finally back doing the numbers that we would have done, and so we're really looking forward. And we said, well, is there something else that we can do to try to keep this train going a bit and get a retirement, because retirements when you work for yourself are not always the easiest things in the world to get. So how are we going to do that? And we invested in Stretch Lab. And so it's a franchise, basically assisted stretching. And there's about 200 of them in the country right now, probably between 400 and 500 before the end of 23 into 24. There's been a lot of licenses sold. So we're going to open that up in Suffolk, Virginia. And we're in the process of just kind of getting that, just sign my lease and all the other things. So we'll have both of them, the salon and the Stretch Lab. And then I have a regular job as well, for as long as I can hang on to it. And so I do that as well. So we just keep pushing best we can. Again, it's all back to that same mentality. Nothing's too much. We just got to keep pushing.
So listen, I got a few questions for you. As you were talking, we talked about the skateboarding, and then you mentioned your dad a couple of times, things that he said. It seems like he poured into you a little bit. We talked about, motorcycle racing. I'm still, when I see some of these videos and they're going like 100 and gazillion miles an hour on this big of a stretch, and there's a guy literally right next to you, that you're crazy. Okay, that's all I gotta say. So you got motorcycle racing, then you're opening up a businesses. Over the years, what are like top 2-3 lessons that you learned that has helped you in life, you think?
I would probably say, nobody's really asked me that way, so I'd probably say, if you love it, get up and keep trying. If you love it, you got to get up and keep trying. What else are you living for? I mean, I could have a little bit more. I could have some more money, yes, which we all love that. But you also got to enjoy what you do. It's very stereotypical when you say it. You got to enjoy life and all the other things that people talk about. You can't blow everything within means. But I would say, if you love it, when things are bad, you got to get up and keep trying. I would say that's number one. And number two is, learn from what you've done previously. Don't make the same mistakes. And have confidence in yourself. So I guess it ends up being 3. So I would say that's it. You got to have confidence in yourself. If you're just walking around and you're not holding your head high, then you're probably not doing something you need to do in your own life. Whether that is, if you aspire to make $10,000 a year or you aspire to make $1 million a year, you are striving for whatever that number is, and you feel confident that you are going to go ahead and get there. You better have some confidence in yourself, or you're not going to enjoy your life. So I think that's always really big.
I love it.
Dude, that's gold. That's gold. Well, hey, man, we're out of time, but I really want to thank you for being on the Life Inner Show, for sharing your experiences, for inspiring people. Listen, I think I've been inspired by listening to your story of all these things of just not taking no and just keep going and keep striving and keep pushing. And it's awesome, man. So I really appreciate you sharing that with our audience and with us during our time together, man.
Oh, it's been fantastic. Thanks for it. It went really quick, which I know it would. Talking to you and Jason since I met you, man, it's been great. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Thanks, man.
Really, him? Really?
No. I met Jason first, Peter.
No, but I'm saying him. I mean, not forget me. Him?
Oh,
really?
Yeah. He's he came highly recommended from a mutual friend of ours, and it's been really cool.
He got paid off really well, I think, that friend.
All right. Man, what a cool dude and a cool story, huh?
Yeah, man. And then, like, just from the whole thing about Peanut, right? The nickname, Peanut.
I know,
right?
man.
And it stayed with him, and he's taking it on, and
everybody calls him Nut. Like our mutual friend Cal calls him Nut, and it's really cool, man. And I love it, man. There's something about him and like people like that. Like I love what he said, man. He's like, he's always pushing the boundaries. He's pushing the limits. He loves what he does, and like I think something magical happens. Like that's like some sort of magical formula for success.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. One of the things that he mentioned in the episode is actually a few things. Is one, his dad said to him, "Don't let anybody steal your joy." Yeah. And I think that is a really important thing because there are some people out there who are pretty much their whole mission in life to steal somebody else's joy. In a way, at least it seems like it, right? So don't let anybody steal your joy. And then, pushing the limits. If you're doing what you love, keep doing. Got to keep getting back up. But what else are you going to do, right? Yeah. Those lessons, I think, are really important because I think that's what keeps people moving forward. That's what keeps you refining that thing. I mean, I don't know how much of a natural abilities this guy has when it comes to racing or when it comes to, at least seems to me with racing, doesn't have all these natural abilities because he said he was going 30 miles an hour. He was freaking out.
Right.
So it's not like it's just naturally came to him,
Yeah. Well,
you have to work at it.
To your point, what you just said, man, that he said, don't let anybody steal your joy is, especially because he, as a black athlete in non-black athlete sports, right? Extreme sports. And I guess you could consider both skateboarding and motorcycle racing extreme sports. Like he didn't focus on that and get tied up in that. He focused on having fun. He focused on getting better. He focused on loving it and extracting as much joy from it as possible. And like that focus, I think, really accelerated how good he got. And just for comparison, dude, like this guy, the track he mentioned, VIR, like he's doing like laps in like 40 seconds faster than me. And by the way, like, so he's doing like under a minute 30 for like over a 2 mile track. And I'm doing like 2 minutes and 10, like this guy could like lap me in like 2 laps. It's insane. Like, and so it's just a different level of success that he's been able to extract and apply to like everything he's doing. So it's fascinating to me. And the other thing about this is like, I've had the chance to sit around the track with him and just shoot the breeze. And like I think when you do things that you love, like it comes out of you. You know what I mean? Like you can tell somebody who does what they love, and that comes out in your personality, in your mood, and how you interact with people, that you don't fully recognize.
Well, and it comes out with what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, I love human behavior, studying the human psychology, that kind of stuff, right? What makes us who we are. Why do we do the things that we do? I will study this, listen to it like every day. I literally, that's what I'm drawn to.
Yeah,
and I think when you love something, you're drawn to it. You want to learn more about it. You want to engage with it. And that's how you get better, I think. I've seen from his conversation, there is not only that, there is some resiliency in there. Yeah. Because, he got knocked down, a bunch of times in life. And he keeps getting back up. He keeps moving forward, doesn't let the life to keep him down. And I think that's an important aspect into all of us, because whether it's COVID or it's a recession or it's something personal in your life, health, whatever, divorce, you gotta keep getting back up.
Right. Well, dude, speaking of that, like, how about him talking about those guys that are getting strapped onto their motorcycles after being paralyzed on a motorcycle and doing it again? Like that's getting back on the horse. Like that's
on the bike in this case.
I mean, that's like, I mean, think about that. Like, and think about what everybody else must think about that person. Like, oh my gosh, they're insane. What are they doing? They're gonna kill themselves. Like, they already did this, and people think they're nuts, but they're not gonna let that passion die. They love it.
Right. But here's what I hear from that particular example is that these guys, they don't see limits.
Yeah,
They
find
don't
a way.
see that, okay, I can't do this. That's not in their vocabulary. Can't is not in their vocabulary. And I think the people, think about like some of the biggest, most successful people in our lives, whether it's Elon Musk or whoever it might be. I don't think these guys have can't in their vocabulary. And I think that's where the innovations come in, the developments, the, getting to the next level, whatever it might be. If you don't have the can't, I can't do it, or you can't do it in your vocabulary, you're going to find a way. I think every single person can find a way. And look at like, what is this, the motivational speaker
Nick.
that doesn't have any arms or legs?
Yeah.
Nick, right?
Nick, yeah.
I mean, that guy is incredible. He did not allow the life to stop him and keeps going forward, which, by the way, I want him on our next, on some of the episodes on here. One of the episodes, he come on this show. That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, man. I saw him speak when I had my job up, when I was working in the lab up in DC. He came in, I had no clue who he was. This was probably 2000, must have been 2008, 2009. That I don't even know if he had a name for himself or he just started off, but there's a guy, literally no arms, no legs, gets up there and just gives this inspiring speech about not letting anything in life hold you back. And, Nut is an awesome example of taking that same principle of not taking no for an answer, of pushing the limits, of doing what you love and just making it happen.
So listen, listeners, right now, if you got one thing out of this episode, what if you just can't this particular thing? Take the word can't out of your vocabulary.
Yeah.
What would your life look like if you just took the word can't out of your vocabulary? What would you do? How would you tackle life? What would you do on a daily basis? What would your vision be for your life? What would your vision be for your dreams, what you want to do in your life if can't was not available? Just something to think about.
Awesome. Well, listen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed speaking with Nut and having a great conversation around a lot of things that I think are relevant and applicable to our lives today. So grab those nuggets, do something with it, and make a change in your own life. If you want to be part of the conversation with Life in Here, go join us in our private Facebook group. You can find us just by typing in Life in Here, and you'll see a private group. There's not too much behind that. Leave us a rating. I would really love if you could just take one quick second to just leave us a review. Just give us go to the Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and just give us a review and make a comment, because that's frankly how we get in front of a lot of other people, and they see it and it inspires them to give it a chance, and then they get a chance to listen to the show, and then that's how we impact lives. So just thank you in advance if you have the chance to do that, and we will see you next week. Take care. Have a great one.